This list is going to show you the top 5 UFO incidents involving police officers. Number 5. The Lonnie Zamora Incident. On April 24, 1964, in Socorro, New Mexico, Police Sergeant Lonnie Zamora was pursuing a speeding car when he heard a roar and saw the flame in the sky to the southwest some distance away. He initially thought it was an explosion from a potential car accident. So, on his way to the spot where he originally saw the flash of light, Zamora radioed in his status. Soon after, dispatcher Ned Lopez stated that Zamora reported back and asked him to look out the window for an object he described as a giant aluminum balloon. Zamora later claimed that when he initially saw the object on the ground, there were human-like figures standing next to the balloon-like object, before it lifted off the ground surrounded by a blue and orange flame, then it flew away. Upon investigating the area, other officers noticed that there was evidence of a fire in the brush, and much of it appeared to be burned or smoldering. Although there are several skeptics who offer plausible explanations, the Zamora incident is still considered one of the most credible eyewitness accounts of record. In fact, just like in Roswell, the New Mexico authorities would later turn the Zamora incident into a tourist attraction. Number 4. Hudson UFO Sightings. From New Year's Eve in 1982 to 1986, New York and Connecticut experienced a significant wave of UFO sightings in the Hudson Valley. Thousands of eyewitness accounts stated that a massive V-shaped flying object that was possibly 500 feet in width was moving across the sky at a very slow pace and at an unusually low altitude. 2 of the first accounts of this strange object were from a Yorkshire Police Department officer and a retired NYPD officer. The officers, as well as many other eyewitnesses, would claim the lights that emitted from it were not like anything you would see on a plane or helicopter, flashing red, blue, green, with a white light beaming down from its center on the bottom of the ship. And if that isn't strange enough, the object allegedly made no noise. Not long after, a mass sighting caused a tremendous traffic jam on the Taconic Parkway, in which eyewitnesses described the same V-shaped object moving very slowly across the sky with unusual light patterns on the bottom. Several pilots also reported the same phenomena. The skeptics shrugged this off as a top-secret military plane, similar to the stealth B-2, but no proof of this has ever come out. Regardless, with so many eyewitness accounts on record and no verifiable explanation by the government, it is clear that the Hudson Valley did experience something very strange in the mid-1980s. Number 3. The Exeter Incident. On September 3, 1965, an extraordinary event in Exeter, New Hampshire brought national attention to the small community. At around 2 a.m., a teenager by the name of Norman Muscarello was walking along Route 150 when he noticed strange lights moving towards him from a nearby field. As the lights got closer, he noticed that the lights were red and thought that it could be an emergency vehicle. But as the object approached him, he noticed it was in fact hovering not far over where he was standing. He quickly hid and waited for the object to leave. After it left, he was able to flag down a car which would take him to the police station, where a visibly frightened Norman gave his account of the event. When Norman was finished, one of the station police officers named Eugene Bertrand decided to give Norman a lift home and do some investigating of his own. When the two arrived at the location of the sighting, Officer Bertrand noticed a lot of rustling around from the animals in a nearby barn. Shortly after seeing the brush moving around, Officer Bertrand stated that a huge object descended from behind the barn and began to slowly and silently move towards them. Officer Bertrand grabbed Muscarello, and the two went to his cruiser to radio for backup. Officer David Hunt was the first to respond, and as he showed up on the scene, the object was still hovering about 100 feet off the ground, rapidly flashing several red lights. Hunt stated that shortly after his arrival, the object quickly flew away, but no sound was coming from it. He added that a military plane flew overhead right after the mysterious object left, almost as if it was investigating as well. Officers Bertrand and Hunt would receive a lot of public scrutiny for their statements, yet they still, to this day, stick to their stories. Number 2. Portage County UFO. On April 17, 1966, 2 Portage County, Ohio deputy sheriffs pursued a mysterious flying object in the town of Atwater, Ohio. Deputy Sheriff Dale Spower and Deputy Sheriff Wilbur Neff were responding to an abandoned car just off Route 224. When they arrived, the two got out of the car to investigate the vehicle, and suddenly an object rose up from out of the nearby woods. As it cleared the trees, the craft began to move slowly towards the two officers. Deputy Spower stated that the glowing aircraft was shaped like an ice cream cone. Both officers then began to follow the object, which allegedly would be ahead of the cruiser, yet paced them at the exact speed they were traveling. Eventually, two more police officers named Officer Wayne Houston from East Palestine and Officer Frank Panzanella of Pennsylvania would join the pursuit. After an 86-mile high-speed chase across eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania, the four officers would report that the UFO shot straight up and vanished into the night sky. All four officers received a lot of criticism and ridicule by the public for their claims. Three of the officers would eventually get over it and move on, but Deputy Spower would become so emotionally traumatized by the whole thing that he went into a deep depression. He would have trouble functioning on a daily basis, to the point that he would lose his job and eventually his wife and his children. After several years, Dale would finally start to pick up the pieces of his life and try to reach out to his family. He mended the relationship with his children and moved to West Virginia, where he worked the mines. Unfortunately, one day at work, Dale had an accident and fell 75 feet, breaking his neck and putting him in a coma. Dale's son James said that one day a nurse came out of his father's room screaming that he was possessed by an alien. Former Deputy Spower's saga would sadly come to an end after he got pneumonia and passed away in 1983. The Portage County UFO was apparently the inspiration for Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And number 1, the St. Clair Triangle. On January 5, 2000, police officers in southern Illinois were sent on a wild goose chase after a truck driver named Melvern Knoll called into the Highland Police Department to report a strange-looking flying object that appeared to be moving in an unusual manner and heading towards the nearby town of Lebanon, Illinois. You could clearly hear officers laughing in the background as the dispatcher was giving the report. Officer Ed Barton was first to respond, and upon arriving to the area, he saw the object that the truck driver was earlier mocked over. Shortly after Barton reported back what he saw, Officer David Martin radioed in a strange triangular-shaped object flying near Shiloh, Illinois. A third officer, Detective Mark Lobanov, saw the object near O'Fallon, Illinois, just east of St. Louis on the opposite side of the Mississippi River. Lobanov would state that it was like something he had never seen before. Officer Craig Stevens of Millstadt heard the calls and went out in search of the object, which he would eventually report seeing, and claim that there was an almost quiet, low-decibel hum when it flew overhead. There was suspicion that the nearby Scott Air Force Base might have something to do with this, but they reported they were only flying C-5 cargo planes, which would not fit the eyewitness descriptions. By the time the sun arose the next morning, a total of 5 separate officers from different police precincts in multiple cities reported the same thing. A massive triangle with strange lights was moving silently across the southern Illinois night sky. The sheer amount of police officers has to make you wonder, what in the world did they see that night?